Now let's talk about the internal rate of return. The internal rate of return method is basically a flip side of net present value. So with net present value, you put in a threshold rate, you discount the cash flows, and you come up with a net present value. And if it's greater than zero, then yay. If it's less than zero, then boo. Internal rate of return is a different way of using the same calculation method. So with internal rate of return, what you say is, let's set the net present value to zero and work out what internal rate of return, what discount rate that implies about the rest of the equation. So instead of solving for the net present value, we set net present value equal to zero and we work out what R is. Okay, so if this thing is giving us really good cash flows, then we've got to discount them really heavily to get them back to zero. So a higher rate of return means effectively that you're getting better cash flows. Now, solving this is not easy. It's a polynomial of order n, where n is the number of periods. So you either use Excel, which does this internally, use it by trial and error with a financial calculator, or you just write a computer program to iterate over and zoom in on the correct answer. Okay, so essentially what we have here is the net present value formula, except we set the net NPV to zero, and we try to work out what I is. That's what we do. Now, there's some problems with this, especially if you've got a lot of positive and negative cash flows. If you've just got one negative cash flow and a whole bunch of positive ones, then you're probably just going to have one value of R. But if you remember some of your high school maths, remember when you have a quadratic, so you've got ax squared plus bx plus c, there's always two answers to that. There's a positive x, there are positive values of x and a negative value of x, or even just two values of x that will make that whole equation equal to zero. Now in maths, you want to find both of them. But for internal rate of return, sometimes one of those is going to be weird. And if you've got n terms, you've got I to the power of n, you've got additional possible answers. Okay, so the issue here is you're going to come up with a number of rates out of this process, and you're not sure which is the right one, especially when you've got non-conventional cash flows. You have some positives, you have some negatives, then some more positives. And the other thing about the internal rate of return is it's implicit that in the calculation that the cash flows are reinvested at a discount rate. Now, stop for a second and think about this. Let's say you've got two projects that you're comparing. If project one gives you a discount, an internal rate of 10%, and project two gives you an internal rate of return of 20%, you must say that project two is better. Okay? But implicit in that is the idea that any cash flows you get earlier can be made bigger in future by reinvesting them at that rate. So once those cash flows come out of the project, they go somewhere else and they get reinvested at that rate. So if you've got two projects and they're the only thing that's different, with the 20% one, you're assuming that any cash flows from there, once they come out of the project, come back to you, can be invested somewhere else at 20%. While with the 10% one, when those cash flows come back to you, they can be reinvested somewhere else at 10%. Huh? Why is the answer to this comparison of projects making different assumptions about the rest of your business? That's really wacky, right? We're so getting overwhelmed by the rate of return that the IRR process gives us that we forget that the thing that really matters for our business is our threshold rate, right? Our cost of capital. How much does it cost us to borrow this money, right? So if I can repay a loan that I'm paying 12% on, then I'm not getting 10% or 20% yield once the cash flows come out. I'm getting 12% because I'm saving the interest on that loan. Again, this is the really weird thing about internal rate of return. Just because 20% is bigger than 10% doesn't mean that the net present value of that one is bigger than the net present value of that one when you compare them both using the same threshold rate, which is your cost of capital. Right? If you're trying to answer the question, has my business value increased? You don't want to say, is this giving me a higher rate of return than this? Or that's part of it. You want to say, is this project giving me a better rate of return than my cost of funds, than what's costing me to borrow or get money from investors? And if it's not, then it doesn't matter if this rate is bigger than that one. If they're still less than my threshold rate, I shouldn't be taking either. Okay, so internal rate of return is it's a bit dodgy. Okay, so when you've got mutually exclusive projects, it doesn't necessarily give you the correct answer. Because of that cash flow thing, the timing, it can give you different rates. It's not explicitly including your threshold rate. If you're taking one project and comparing it to another, then for each project, your next best alternative is the other project. So you should be discounting this project and the other projects. Oh, yeah, see, it gets circular. It's a little bit weird.